G'day everyone and welcome to my art channel Brushes with Beck. In today's video I'm going to be showing you a portion of a drawing that I've worked on so far of a black-bellied whistling duck. Now I am using Pastelmat paper for this piece, which is a lovely return for me because I've been missing using this paper. I had it packed away for a while with the move. So I've pulled out a piece of, I think it's a light blue Pastelmat, and I'm using both my Derwent Drawing and my Faber-Castell Polychromos colour pencils on this, although I am using primarily Derwent Drawing for the most part, but obviously using Polychromos where I can't get the right colours, mainly for this beak that you see me working on at the moment. Now I absolutely love drawing birds, and I keep seeming to return to them every time I'm not sure what I want to draw. I always pick a bird, and I have been looking at this photo for a while thinking that I want to actually attempt it. So this was a nice return to Pastelmat for me. The beak gives me a different texture to the feathers and some different colours. There's some beautiful plumage on this bird, so I'm really looking forward to completing the piece. Now, for this piece, you can see that I'm just slowly working in different areas of colour. I like to map out sort of some lighter and darker areas and then fill in my midtones a little bit and progress back and layer back in with some lighter tones and some darker tones so that I'm slowly blending those together to get a nice smooth surface there. I don't like to go in too hard with any one colour. It's nice to be able to layer back and forth with colours to be able to get those smoother colours and the smooth transitions. And with Pastelmat paper, you do not have to worry about running out of paper surface, so running out of the ability to layer colour, because Pastelmat takes layers very, very well, so you can sort of almost layer endlessly to achieve the result that you want. So the beak was quite an easy part. It's a fairly small part, so there wasn't a lot to work on, but there were some subtle, little highlights, darker areas, a little bit of texture, the shadow around the edge near the face, and I really actually was very pleased with how the beak turned out for something, just that's such a small aspect of the piece. From there I moved on to the head, and this is actually the reason I chose to draw this photo at this time. I'm using pale cedar, as you can see there, from the Derwent Drawing pencil range. And the reason I chose this is because there's an unusual pale brown tone to this bird's head. It's sort of a dusky browny grey. It's very unusual, and I really don't have any sort of colour in my pencil range that is close to this colour. So I've basically had to create this colour, and I started with the pale cedar, which may seem like an unusual choice because it is a green, but it added a nice tone to the base of that pale browny grey that made it so it wasn't just too grey. And I really like how it's turned out so far. You'll see it obviously later on in this video, but I was very pleased with that. And the main reason I wanted to experiment with this grey tone on this bird's head is because it's a very similar colour to some areas of my cat, and I've been wanting to draw one of my cat for a while. You've seen, if you've been following my channel for a while, I've drawn my other cat Jasper before, but I haven't drawn my cat Jasiri because I'm sort of not sure how to get that colour tone through her belly, but I'm thinking that this was sort of a good practice for getting a similar colour tone to that and achieving that with colours that you wouldn't necessarily expect, like that pale cedar. So with the Derwent Drawing pencils on the head there, I do layer in very, very lightly, not only because this area of colour is very pale, but also because it makes it easier to blend colours together if you go in a bit lightly. Now my cat there, that's Jasiri, that's what I was talking about a moment ago, about drawing her. She has actually learned, if you watch that closely, she actually lifted her head up to touch my light and turn it off. She has learned that if she turns off my light that I pay attention to her because I have to stop drawing. So she'll come by and boop the end of my light with her nose so she turns it off, and I have to stop drawing and turn it back on, and I usually pet her. So she's very crafty and very clever, and it's actually quite funny. So, but anyway, back to drawing the head here. I've moved away from the Derwent drawing pencils now, and I'm using the Polychromos, one of the warm greys, to add in some darker areas of that head where the feathers are a little bit not as sleek, they're a little bit stuck out, so they create shadows, and the feathers are a bit darker in that area. So I'm using the warm grey, I think it's 4 or 5, and then using the warm grey 1 or 2 there to actually smooth and blend out that that darker warm grey. So these lighter warm grey colours from the Polychromos are actually very good for smoothing out colours on Pastelmat. If you've got a bit of a grainy texture that you want to get rid of, you can use a lighter colour or that's a similar colour tone to the area to smooth that out. You have to be very careful not to use too much pressure. It's just a very light application of pressure and just gently smooth over it, and it will take away a lot of that grain from the Pastelmat paper, because that's one thing that people don't like about it, is that it is quite grainy, but if you layer up enough and smooth things out, you really don't see that grainy texture at the end. So just working through that head and refining those darker areas, adding a bit more colour, smoothing out and adding a bit more colour before adding in that nice dark shadow at the front. I find that once I start to get those nice shadows in, then things really start to pop. I have actually avoided the eye at this point because I wanted to get a little bit more of the head and neck done. I find that if I added an eye too early, sometimes I'm a bit focused on that and I can overlook where I might need some darker shadows or some brighter highlights. But if I go around the eye, I can make everything else look how it needs to first, and then add in the eye and not be too focused on that. So I actually really love the colours in this bird, and once again I'm using Derwent drawing colours there, just very, very lightly applying that colour down, and it goes on nice and rich. And then once again, as I said earlier, it is much easier to blend out. Now I have actually done a comparison video of Derwent drawing pencils and Polychromos on Pastelmat paper. So if you're interested in that and how these two pencils perform differently on this paper, go and check out that video. I'll link it up in the cards above, and you can see I've drawn the same image with both the Derwent drawing pencils and the Polychromos pencils. And both get very, very good results. Slightly different technique, but not too different. And this paper accepts both of them with ease. So at first, Derwent drawing pencils can seem like they sort of clump together a bit with the paper texture because they are a wax pencil, so they can look a little bit clumpy, but you've just got to keep layering. And as you keep layering, that texture will smooth out beautifully and you'll get a nice soft image. But like I said, I like to go in very lightly with the colours. It makes it easier to blend them out later and to smooth out over the top, and just makes it easier to layer other colours over the top. So as I said, this bird has really beautiful colour patterns and is quite unique. It's got this beautiful dark brown sort of, I guess, mohawk. It doesn't really stick up, it's just like a racing stripe of colour over the top of the head and down the back of the neck to that beautiful rusty neck colour there. So the Derwent drawing pencils are the perfect pencils for a piece like this because there's beautiful earthy tones and they're really lovely to work with. But mostly I really wanted to get back into this Pastelmat paper because, as I said, I haven't used it that much recently because of moving, but now we're settled, it's wonderful to get back into it, and it reminds me just how much I love using Pastelmat. So as you can see, I'm just, as I said, slowly working in those colours and just building them up over time, not going in too strong at once, just adding them in bit by bit, adding in darker areas where I need to map out little features of the bird, and just layering them up. Now I'm using a dark indigo there, which is a dark blue, to really pop out those darker areas of the brown. I have used blue in the shadow against the front of the face and under the chin there. So it's important, I find, to tie that blue into other areas of the bird so that it's more of a cohesive piece. So you don't just have blue in that shadowed areas, you have them in other sections of the bird where there's slightly darker areas as well, and you're not just having blues in one part of the piece, which can look a little bit disjointed sometimes. So once I've done some of those darker areas of the bird, I realize my face isn't quite dark enough. So I'm going back in and adding some more warm grey in there and smoothing that out as well. A little bit more of the dark indigo as well, just to darken that up a touch and add that blue tone in. So just working back and forth, slowly building up the colour, because if you go in with too much colour, it can be hard to remove colour. So I just like working that, building that up slowly. So for this video, like I said, I haven't completed this piece. It's only the bird's head and neck here, but I do a very physical job role at my main job, and sometimes my arm gets quite tired from that. So I didn't quite have the stamina in my arm this week to complete a full piece, but I wanted to share this with you guys, and I thought it would be good to actually have a longer style video, because I know a lot of my videos recently have been much quicker, much more sped up, and I can't always go into as much detail about what I'm doing. And I wanted to get back into that a bit more, like, because I felt I used to do slightly longer videos with a bit more detail about what I'm doing with the piece rather than just a super quick overview. So that was important to me for this video as well, and not being able to finish the piece, it meant it was a great opportunity for me to go into a bit more detail with you guys about what I'm doing. So there's a darker area on the side of the bird's neck here, so I've used that Polychromos over the top of the Derwent drawing to map in where that brown area is, and then going back in with the Derwent drawing and smoothing back over that. Now you can see me, I'm adding the shadow with the dark indigo, putting the blue in there, and I can't just put straight blue in, I have to add some of the colour tones of the bird's feather as well. So some of the rusty colours and the peachy colours, just to sort of make that all very cohesive. Same with adding the blue into other areas of the feathers, bringing it all together. So it is just a matter of slowly building up those colours. Pastelmat is not a paper for everyone. You're not going to like every single paper. I don't really like working on some papers, but it's not a matter of Pastelmat being a bad paper if you don't like it. It just means that it's not for you. Pastelmat is a very good paper for colour pencils. You can get some beautiful smooth results on it, so texture is not always a big problem if the texture is good quality. So as you can see, as I'm using this, I think it's like a peach color or something from the Derwent drawing, as I'm using that, it is smoothing out that texture quite well and making it much more smooth and fluffy looking as opposed to rough and bumpy. So I'm toning down the brightness of that now a little bit with the darker color, because I felt it was a little bit too bright, and then I can go back in and blend it out a little bit more without worrying about it being too bright at all. So just a matter of slowly progressing through, making sure you're really looking at your reference photo for your color tones and your values, and making sure you're keeping those accurate. I was attempting to blend here with the ivory, and it didn't quite work out very well with the Polychromos over the top of the Derwent drawing. The ivory blends out Polychromos very nicely on Pastelmat if you've got some sort of yellowy tones, but that area is only Derwent drawing pencils, so it didn't blend out like it normally would straight over the top of Polychromos. But that wasn't really an issue. I just giving it a go to see if it would do the same over pure wax-based pencils or not. So now I'm up to the point on the neck here where I'm refining how dark my dark areas are. I'm adding in some final color tones, a more reddy brown here, as opposed to just the dark brown that I had before, and refining some little different shadows and texture in the feathers of the neck there before I go in and blend that out a little bit more. I decided it wasn't quite orange enough, so I've done a very light glaze with a Polychromos pencil over the top, just to get some bit more of a hint of orange in those feathers. Because like I said, the Derwent drawing pencils have a very limited color range, so sometimes it's just nice to supplement with another pencil set just to get a particular color that you're after. Adding in a little bit more orange in that shadow just to make it look more connected to the bird, because it looked a bit disjointed, and once again adding more of that dark blue into the brown tones to unify that as well. So getting towards the end of this piece here now, or at least what I've accomplished so far, and I'm just trying to refine that neck and smooth out any remaining grain and just sort of unify those colors on the neck, blend them out, make it look soft and fluffy, and refine just little textury details there. So overall, it's come together quite nicely so far, and I do hope you've enjoyed this video and gotten something out of it. I will be uploading hopefully the rest of this one next week for you guys, so I hope you stick around for that. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. I upload a new art video every single week, so I will see you again next week for another video. Stay creative.